11,000 BCE. Godzilla is beyond exhausted. Scar King's army has been locked up, but in the fight, one of the strongest of their warriors had escaped before it being locked up. The rival. Godzilla couldn't let him escape. He chased him down for years. It was tiring, but their final confrontation had arrived in ancient Egypt. Godzilla jumped the rival, ramming through a small mountain where the rival had been creating weapons from dead titans. The rival quickly grabbed a spear and hurled it at Godzilla with full force, who barely moved out of the way for it to put a hole through his shoulder. But Godzilla shrugged it off and rammed the rival into a nearby cliffside, kicking him and charging up his atomic breath. Right before he could shoot his blast, a rival grabbed an axe with Gojira's dorsal plate inside and blocked the attack, putting it in front of his face that absorbed Godzilla's blast. Godzilla realized this and stopped, but it was too late as the rival used the axe to swipe into Godzilla's chest, ripping right through it. Godzilla wailed out in pain, stumbling back and ripping the axe out, crushing the dorsal plate to not be used. The rival began running for his other weapons he laid out, but Godzilla aimed the shot and blasted his atomic breath in time with correct aim, killing the rival in the hit, burning him to a crisp. Godzilla collapsed. That hit got his heart. His blood was everywhere. Even a Hawk Muto could kill him in a state. He needed to move. Godzilla left the scene, dragging himself up north, staying clear of any titans and finding a massive radioactive source. The Arctic, one of the biggest stockhouses of radiation in the world. He needed to evolve, and now would change history. I am Azarus. I am a Watcher. Embark with me on this journey as we explore the question, what if Godzilla evolved before 2014? Godzilla had arrived and found a titan already living there, a relatively weak one looking for strength, Abzu, in a young state. Godzilla, despite being weakened, killed him with one atomic blast and got inside, absorbing his DNA and all of the radiation nearby. It took days to recovery, but he was ready. Godzilla broke through the ice and released an alpha call, ordering all titans to go sleep immediately. All his power, all of this radiation was so powerful. Why did he do this before? All of this power heightened his senses, letting him sense nearly every radiation source on the globe and some more titans than he could before. It wasn't as strong as Mothra's senses, but this was more than enough. With these senses, he could feel two powerhouses battling, one of his greatest allies and one of the greatest parasites to the globe, Dagon and the Muto Prime. Dagon needed his help. Godzilla wasted no time and charged for Dagon's location, arriving to the battlefield in less than an hour with the Hollow Earth vortexes giving him less ground to cover. Dagon currently was on his belly, his green scales splattered with blood, the Muto Prime grabbing his tail and lifting him up in the air, slamming him onto his back. Dagon roared in pain, huffing at the Prime and roared in defiance. The Muto Prime roared back, nearly offended, getting her ovipositors out and ready to implant the spores. Dagon got ready, closing his eyes, feeling a sharp pain for only a split second before a dark violet beam slashed through her ovipositors, burning them to ash. The Muto Prime shrieked out in pain, the two turning to see Godzilla. Dagon looked, grinning, knowing the Prime was winning this, but he was surprised by Godzilla's change in appearance. Godzilla now had a slimmer build, longer and more curved dorsal plates with longer and more flexible arms, having tiny suction points on his fingers and palms with pissed-off crimson eyes. Godzilla didn't waste time and ran right through the Prime, who buried her claws into the ground, but Godzilla pushed past it, causing her claws to cut against the friction on the ground. Godzilla swiped his claws into the Muto Prime's eyes, causing her to roar in pain, but she didn't have time as his tail swiped her off her feet. Godzilla leaped himself up in the air, angling the jump and crushed the Muto Prime's torso, making her roar out as blood coughed up. The Prime released weak, shallow breaths, but Godzilla didn't show any mercy and shot his atomic breath at her skull, wiping her body out of existence. Godzilla roared in victory, turning to see his ally Dagon. Oh no, he was too late. Dagon was dead. His injuries were too much. Godzilla took a step forward and kneeled down, looking with guilt. He failed. He couldn't save him. Godzilla would never forget that and never forgive himself. Godzilla let his ally rest in peace. May he be with his family once again. Godzilla turned away, going into the ocean. Godzilla left the scene and went to his lair to rest, absorbing tons of radiation. But that day, it made him think. If he had been there for Dagon, he would still be alive. He can't let this stuff happen. He couldn't. All of the deaths that were caused because he was too slow. He needed to stop it. No one was going to get hurt again. After a few weeks, he left his lair and went to the surface. Some Titans were still awake. Scylla, Baphomet, and Behemoth. Behemoth could stay as long as they didn't cause trouble, and he usually didn't. Scylla and Baphomet, on the other hand, no. Godzilla has made his way for Baphomet first, who is roaming the coast of North America, on the western side. Godzilla didn't announce himself, rising out of the water and knocking him out into the ocean, Baphomet quickly getting onto his feet onto shore instead of his ground, but Godzilla ordered him to bow immediately. Godzilla gave him two choices: go into hibernation or die right now. Baphomet took the first option, good job, and found a location to settle in, not wanting to get on Godzilla's bad side. Next was Scylla. Scylla had been tracking down human civilizations and destroying them, which was not sliding with Godzilla. Godzilla did the same thing as he did with Baphomet to Scylla, attacking her without warning, but he wasn't giving her options. It was only one option: to be executed. Scylla quickly tried to retreat into the water, but Godzilla grabbed one of her legs with enough strength to completely rip it off. Scylla collapsed, trying to get back up, but Godzilla stood on her shell, taking his time to crush it, taking a few minutes of agonized shrieks from Scylla before he got tired of the torture. Godzilla put his full force on her, turning her body into a bloody green mess. Godzilla spat on her corpse, turning away and taking off to the seas. Every other Titan took the hint and stayed deep in Hollow Earth or in hibernation to not anger the king. And from that day on, Godzilla was never really a secret. He patrolled the globe 24/7 to modern day, so usually staying out of humanity's way. But of course, when you're nearly a 400-foot radioactive monster constantly in the oceans, you're gonna get spotted eventually. And of course, the rumors about Godzilla spread around the world, but wasn't really believed in. This did luckily make Monarch much more popular and got them more staff, but otherwise didn't change much. The Iron Dragon, the first recorded Titan in history, wasn't found until 2012, where his flayed corpse was found near Mount Fuji. Looks like his fight with Godzilla didn't go so well this time. But unfortunately, the Mutos were still aborn because of the Muto Prime implanting the spores into Dagon. The Hawk Muto hatched, awakening and making his way for the female Muto, who followed after. But Godzilla wasn't letting that happen. He and the male Muto intercepted each other in Hawaii, Godzilla getting the jump on him from the ocean and tried to drag him in. But the Hawk Muto was just as fast to dodge these attacks and only took minor damage, escaping out to land where he fed on a nuclear sub and took off before Godzilla could catch him. Godzilla was infuriated as Monarch and the military continued following Godzilla's movements, not bothering to attack, and the Mutos met in San Francisco where they began making the nest. Godzilla got to the Golden Gate Bridge, stopping before the fleets of ships. Godzilla didn't have time for this. But with the years of Godzilla being active, the entire world knew better. The commander of the fleet ordered the ships to all move as fast as possible and hurry evacuations to prevent a conflict with Godzilla. Godzilla was pleased, trying his best not to hit the bridge, but scraped it with his dorsal plates, but ended up destroying the bridge without as many casualties. Godzilla got into the city faster, where the male Muto arrived to delay his arrival to the nest, but his reckless action would cost his life. Godzilla got a grab onto the male Muto, easily ripping off his wings and slammed him into a building, pinning him there for enough time to curl up his claws and redirect his atomic energy into his hand, releasing a devastating punch that crushed the Muto's skull, pulverizing it. Well, that didn't last long. Godzilla moved on, only exhausting a very minor amount of radiation. And there she was, the female, still laying more of her disgusting eggs. Godzilla was sickened by the sight of her, ready to finally end the Muto parasite's lifespan once and for all. Godzilla charged, quickly toppling over the female Muto onto her back. He slammed his foot onto her chest, the female desperately calling for her mate to save her, but she would soon be joining him. Godzilla unleashed a weakened, but strong enough atomic breath to rip through her armor that set her ablaze, causing her head and upper half to have bone invisible that slowly began burning away. Godzilla picked up her corpse, hurling her at the nest. Forwards, he barely dodged the incoming monster and were sent flying away before they could reach the nest. Godzilla walked over toward the nest, sensing the nuke that housed it. He was aware of the destruction these things could cause if set off. Godzilla drained the nuke dry of radiation, disabling it of an explosion and shot his atomic breath into the nest, burning the eggs to ashes. Godzilla left afterwards as the sun began to rise, vanishing into the ocean. Without the Muto Prime alive, the Mutos were dead for good, except the Queen, who posed no threat to him, since she was loyal to him. But Ghidorah was another story. Alan Jonah, the eco-terrorist leading an organization to be down with Godzilla. He takes Mothra, Emma Russell, and the Orca, going on with their plan to awaken their first Titan, Tiamat. The reason they decide to not awaken Ghidorah first is because of Monarch's extended experience and resources. They learn about many Titans in a much more effective manner, like Ghidorah and his alien threat. Tiamat, hopefully, can stand a chance against Godzilla and save the Earth from humanity. After getting the vocal recognition from Tiamat's code with the Orca, she's awakened before anyone can stop them. Tiamat causes havoc in the state, flooding everything in sight and triggering floods across the planet. Godzilla was mad. Godzilla caught up to her in the Gulf of Mexico, their fight being in the water and the sky. Yes, the sky. Thanks to Tiamat's hydrokinesis, she is able to summon water tornadoes to move herself around with extreme efficiency, dodging Godzilla's attacks and landing slashes and cuts with her fins. But this fight still wasn't going in her favor. Godzilla's power was stronger than Billy's, and considering their radiation levels, Tiamat was out of her element. It would only be a matter of time before she would be killed, so she made a massive explosion of water to mask her escape, taking off to the west before Godzilla could catch her. Godzilla was enraged, trying to catch her as Alan Jonah's organization woke up more Titans like Rodan, but they were all too afraid of Godzilla to rebel against him. This wasn't going to work, leading to a heated argument between Jonah and Emma debating what to do. This argument results in a bullet going in each other's skull. Emma pulls out her gun when Jonah threatened Madison and shot, Jonah doing the same just as her bullet shot. Both died from their wounds. The organization had to continue, losing their leader but still had a goal: save the Earth. There was no choice left. Tiamat vanished and the remaining Titans stayed in their place, as Godzilla only had to beat Rodan to submission. There's only one Titan left that can stop Godzilla: Ghidorah. Monarch tries to stop them, but Ghidorah's awakening is successful, releasing a prideful roar. Godzilla's ears ringed, hearing his nemesis, and charged for Antarctica, not wanting him to escape. But Ghidorah still freed himself from his frozen prison and killed as many humans as possible. But Godzilla arrived before much chaos could continue. Ghidorah noted that Godzilla had changed physically, looking more fit for combat. But little did he know, Godzilla wasn't just a better fighter, but stronger in every way to Ghidorah, especially in the state he was in now. Ghidorah is an arrogant Titan and charged in, all heads roaring as Godzilla stood his ground, red atomic energy and electricity crackling through his dorsal plates. Ghidorah was too late to realize, expecting just a regular atomic breath, but this was one any beam. It was a spiral heat ray, or to be specific, a supercharged spiral heat ray. Godzilla raised his hands up, his scales crackling with energy that blinded anyone looking, that released a massive wave of atomic energy, stronger than anything Ghidorah had seen. He tried to move out of the way, but even if he was fast enough, it still was too powerful. The spiral heat ray had a much wider range of attack, burning off Ghidorah's heads in the chest, burning him to dust except the middle head that landed on the ground. Godzilla nearly collapsed, catching himself as his radiation was nearly depleted from that attack. Godzilla took off, resting in his lair. Ghidorah is dead. At least at the moment. Monarch collected a head and took it for research to understand the regenerative abilities before Alan Jonah's organization could take it, wanting to try to manipulate it to make something that could combat Titans. This means only a few Titans stay awake, like Tiamat, Behemoth, and Rodan, all staying out of Godzilla's way for the time being. But unfortunately for Kong, his home was still met with chaos, the storm that Ghidorah created reaching his island and beginning to cause havoc, killing lots of life and destroying Kong's home. Over the next 5 years, Monarch tried to build him a containment facility, but it did practically nothing and Kong knew it was fake. Without much of a choice, they moved him overseas. And thanks to Godzilla's lack of heightened senses, since Mothra has not died in this timeline, Kong is left at peace, arriving in Antarctica and moving out into the Hollow Earth with their own type of heave Monarch had been developing since the early 2000s. It was truly a magical place. Even with the aggressive wildlife, Kong fighting the throne room and the axe. Never meeting Godzilla, Kong relaxes in the throne room, proud and strong. Without Apex being involved in transporting Kong, no conflict arrives as they leave to ensure the Hellhawks don't become a threat to the humans. But unknown to them, above, Mechagodzilla was Kong, killing a Skullcrawler with ease, number 10. Without any Ghidorah heads to use since Monarch had only one, they resorted to using a pilot system to control the mech, risking the pilot inside being Red Serizawa, but he didn't care. He wanted Godzilla dead for all the chaos he started. Without any Ghidorah in the mech or Godzilla's heightened senses, Mechagodzilla continued being tested without issue past 2024, but eventually one Titan is met with Mechagodzilla, Titanus Frigate. Without Godzilla to keep the reins on him for the time being, he decided to take the risk of getting stronger, attacking nuclear facilities to get more powerful, currently in France, until a proton scream sliced into Rodan's back, burning his body and sending him flying. Rodan got back up to fight Mechagodzilla, but his arrogant ego was ended in a split second as Mechagodzilla's foot crashed down on his head, crushing it, leaving his head as a pulverized mess. Mechagodzilla was welcomed by the world, but Monarch, having a bad history with Apex, didn't trust him just yet. Specifically, Dr. Serizawa. After learning Ren Serizawa, his own son, was piloting that mech, he was enraged, asking Ren what he thought he was doing. "What are you doing?" Serizawa asked. "I'm merely doing what you can't, father," Ren Serizawa responded. "We didn't provoke Titanus Rodan. He was the one who decided to attack. We merely defended." "But this still isn't right. You know Apex. They're gonna go after other Titans. Titans that don't do anything. Titans that don't have any quarrel with humanity." "So what?" Ren asked. "They're still massive threats to us. It's rare that we kill them now and not have the risk." Serizawa sighed, knowing he couldn't change Ren's mind. I just don't want to see you get hurt, okay?" Ren scoffed, walking out on his father. "You gonna believe him? Still defending these creatures after all the deaths that they caused?" Mechagodzilla acted as an anti-Titan defense weapon that was housed in Hong Kong, killing many aggressive Titans like Amulek, Nikika, and Typhon, but ended up killing an innocent Titan, Behemoth, who was minding his business in Rio, as Mechagodzilla arrived out of nowhere and put him to death. This wasn't gonna slide. Just as Mechagodzilla was going to be airlifted out, a crimson and violet beam shot all of the helicopters out of the sky and slammed Mechagodzilla into the ground. Apex drones scanned the area and identified Titanus Gojira, running in, his scales burning and dorsal plates flashing bright. Godzilla had been hunting down the killer to reach the Titan deaths and was beyond enraged that Behemoth was dead. Such a beneficial Titan. Mechagodzilla got up, wheeling himself back and getting his claws ready to intercept Godzilla, but he ducked under the attack and shoulder-chucked Mechagodzilla's head, making him nearly fall over. Godzilla stepped back, then ran as fast as possible, aiming his head down and slammed Mechagodzilla down far into the ground. Mechagodzilla shot out drones that shot missiles, Godzilla shrugging them off and slammed his foot into his chest. He was about to crush it, but Mechagodzilla used his tail to sweep him off his feet, saving him from getting destroyed. Mechagodzilla used his back jet thrusters to send him flying away, dragging against the ground but gave him some room. The two got back up, having the river dividing them. Godzilla glanced down, seeing Behemoth's body ripped to shreds, which only made him more enraged. Godzilla charged, Mechagodzilla doing the same. Godzilla wins the clash, but Mechagodzilla uses his fists and claws to slam Godzilla around, but it wasn't doing any serious damage. Godzilla was slammed into the river, dorsal stuck in the mud that made him struggle for a moment, letting Mechagodzilla get the upper hand, grabbing his jaws and charging up a proton scream. He aimed down, the proton scream shooting out, only for the beam to instead explode his head. Godzilla shot his beam at the same time, winning the second-long beam clash and destroyed the mecha once and for all. Godzilla got up, having some cuts and bruises, but nothing too serious. He charged up a spiral beam, shooting it down into Mechagodzilla and exploded it, destroying all of it. He was very familiar with humanity's pesky ways of rebuilding, so he didn't want them to have a head start. Godzilla turned to see the Apex drones hovering around, looking with pure rage. Godzilla then roared into the sky, releasing an alpha call and an order to all the Titans. If humanity dares attacks, do not hesitate. Godzilla has been protecting the modern era for centuries, and this is how they repay him? Thankfully, Apex learned their lesson and stalled for time to find a way to best Godzilla once and for all, and peace returned once again. But sadly, nothing is forever. Godzilla rests in his lair until it gets a massive headache. The Iwi. The Iwi civilization that he's promised to protect forever if they ever needed him. And they needed him. And they needed his help. Godzilla didn't waste time and left his lair, going to the Arctic to get radiation. He's been here before and knew there would be plenty of radiation left. But something he found weird was that nobody was living here. It was one of the biggest radiation sources and no one was taking it? Whatever, it didn't concern him. Hopefully it wouldn't be important later to the plot. What? No, of course not. Godzilla absorbed the radiation, stronger than ever, and took off to Egypt. Without Godzilla and Kong ever making a team up against Mechagodzilla, Kong stayed down in the Iwi city to protect the vortexes to make sure Scar King didn't make it, while Mothra Prime had went to the surface, meeting up with Godzilla in Egypt. They exchanged greetings, Mothra leaving to take care of something while Godzilla went down through the vortex. But then, his eyes laid on Kong. Kong had never met him before and didn't want to fight right now, trying to establish he was no threat until Godzilla slammed Kong into the ground. Godzilla still hated the Kong species, and knowing that Scar King was likely going to be here soon, he guessed that Kong was with him. Kong punched him off and jumped back onto his feet, using the beast glove to block some of the atomic breath until it spread to his arm. Kong rolled out of the way, patting out the fire as Godzilla chased after him. Kong jumped onto a rock pillar and grabbed a massive tree, brushing the branches off and jumped down, stabbing it into Godzilla's body like a spear. Or so he thought would happen. The tree got shredded to pieces on impact, Kong hitting his head on Godzilla's body, who kicked him off. Kong hit the ground, Godzilla crushing his chest with his foot and charged his atomic breath until there was a loud boom. Godzilla looked up, seeing the wall that kept the EV civilization get destroyed. Scar King and his army. Scar King got on Shima and ordered her to attack with her beam, hitting Godzilla, who began freezing. Godzilla was genuinely scared and panicked until Kong got in front with the beast glove, roaring at Godzilla to move. Godzilla freed himself from his half-frozen state and shot his beam back at Shima, causing her to fall over as Scar King. Kong brushed off the ice off the glove and stood next to Godzilla, who heard something ringing. He turned around, looking up to see the crystal pyramids about to collide. He told Kong to run, dashing away as Scar King got up and watched the gravity warp around him and the army. Godzilla and Kong were also caught up in it and now had no choice but to fight. The two advanced. Kong was adjusting well, while Godzilla was having the time of his life, shredding Kong's apart in his claws and intercepted Shima. Suga and Kong held off Scar King in one eye, but things turned a took for the worse as Shima began freezing Godzilla. Kong's eyes widened in fear as Godzilla was consumed by the ice until two blinding rays sent everyone flying. When everyone could see, Mothra Prime had returned with another Mothra? Mothra Prime had gone to the surface to get her younger counterpart who is resting in China, not involving herself into global affairs until now. Godzilla pulsed himself free, smiling at the two Mothras, and charged Shima. Eventually, the zero-gravity fight stopped and everyone began falling for the vortex. Scar King grinned, letting himself fall, and tried to quicken his descent, the surface being so close, right in his grasp. But his dream was cut by Mothra's god rays who sent her flying away, while Mothra Prime landed the humans safely. Scar King and Shima crashed into the ground, Scar King trying to run to the portal until Godzilla tail whipped him outside. Godzilla laughed at Scar King's desperation, knowing they won, but he turned to Kong, who was impaled by the axe. On their descent, Scar King managed to finally kill Kong. Godzilla had tired him out in their fight before. Godzilla growled in frustration that the only good Kong he's ever met was now dead. Godzilla roared, the monsters ending beside him. Scar King got on top of Shima with the crystal, aiming at them until suddenly he was dragged down. Godzilla's eyes widened in shock as he saw chaos erupt around them. Out of nowhere, thousands of Titan-sized mother longlegs erupted from the tree line and ground, attacking Scar King and Shima. Scar King dropped the crystal whip by accident as the arachnids impale him, Shima taking the chance to crush the crystal and freeze the incoming mother longlegs. Godzilla got ready with the Mothras as more mother longlegs and other giant arachnids were surrounding them, but suddenly they all stopped. They began backing away and bowing? Godzilla suspected it wasn't him, and he was right, hearing the ground beginning to rumble. He and the other Titans turned to see the ground began shaking as a nearby mountain rose out of the ground, a skull rising from the rock. Abaddon. Without Kong in the way, after Godzilla vs. Kong, she was able to do as she pleased and caught Tiamat in her traps, giving her the strength to capture several other Titans and absorb their radiation. And now, despite all the odds, she was stronger than Godzilla, standing at 658 feet and a weight of 680,000 tons. She towered over the Titans with her terrifying pale eyes. With her hive mind over the arachnids, she ordered them to attack, the mother longlegs and other massive arachnids all swarming them. Godzilla and Shima put their past to rest and put their backs to each other, shooting their beams while the Mothras used their god rays to send into the arachnid army flying, but some made it past the beams and began biting into them. Godzilla drowned in them, all non-stop hitting his scales, forcing him to supercharge and pulse himself free. Godzilla let his bloodlust consume him and charged in, shredding the arachnid army apart close up while Shima stuck to her beam. Abaddon was tired of this and shot out several massive webs. The Mothras dodging in the air, but Godzilla was hit and wrapped up in his entire body, the webs having acidic properties strong enough to burn through his scales and strong enough to keep him down. Godzilla roared in pain as his dorsal plates were put through the most pain he's ever been through, pulsing himself free just in time. Abaddon charged in, her massive arms causing the entire battlefield to shake as she tried to impale Godzilla, who ran out of the way, using his atomic breath to keep her at bay. Shima and the Mothras were trying their best, but Mothra was stabbed through her head by one of the mother longlegs, while Mothra Prime swing was accidentally grazed by Shima's frostbite blast, grounding her and eventually getting her overrun. Shima froze in nearby ground to make it slippery, making the arachnids stumble over and offer easy kills. But she saw Godzilla struggling. He was barely dodging Abaddon's massive legs to strike the ground, and it was only a matter of time before he was caught by one. Shima began concentrating all her energy into one blast, Godzilla looking at her with a grin and ran at Shima, making a plan, causing Abaddon to turn around for her face to be frozen by Shima's frostbite cannon. Abaddon screamed out in pain, trying to get herself free, the army running to help her free, but the two Titans took advantage of this. this. Godzilla opened fire with its atomic breath at the legs, managing to slice off one while Shima froze Abaddon's main body, making her weigh a lot more. Abaddon eventually got herself free, but it was too late as her vision was nearly pale white. She got her arachnid army to defend herself and be her new eyes, but wasn't expecting hundreds of vertices to appear out of nowhere. It began shocking her, killing some of the army too. Godzilla took command of the verticians and ordered them to target the army while Shima was draining her life force trying to freeze Abaddon. Eventually, Abaddon adjusted and located Shima, using her legs to sweep her away, but half of her body was still frozen. Godzilla finished his plan and roared for Abaddon's attention, moving out of the way for one of the arms to impale the ground at full force. Godzilla grabbed onto the arm, using all of his radiation and roaring in pain from the whip, but managing to hold Abaddon's limb and lift her up into the air, lifting Abaddon so high and crashed her into the ground when she came back down, causing her entire body to shatter like glass. Godzilla woke up a few hours later in Egypt with Shima, who was laying nearby, standing guard. Shima was loyal to Godzilla now. There was no one to control her anymore, and without Kong, she had no reason to return to Scar King's prison for the other Kongs, so Godzilla seemed to be the best option. Godzilla smiled and thanked her, the two going to the Arctic where they'd live. Godzilla and Shima became friends, vowing to each other to protect the Earth from whatever threat it may be. Apex would one day return, but these two would be ready for it. The end.
Herc and his son Chuck will be running point using Striker Eureka. Fastest Jaeger in the world.
First and last of the Mark Vs. Australia decommissioned it a day before the Sydney attacks.
Yeah, it was lucky we were still around.
Yep, now it's running point for us.
Wait, running point on what?
The king of the monsters himself.
Oh, what has that foot been now?